Welcome back to the Naked Wealth Podcast. I have been really excited for this episode. I have Dr. Molly Maloof with me today. She's a pioneering force in health span extension and longevity medicine, something you all know I'm very, very passionate about. Her expertise spans personalized medicine, digital health technology, biofeedback-assisted lifestyle interventions, and scientifically based wellness products and services. Her book, The Spark Factor, was the first biohacking book for women. And she's also the founder and CEO of Adamo Bioscience, which is at the forefront of bringing modern sex education to couples with a groundbreaking intimacy program developed through a study of the science of love. I really appreciate you joining me today and love for you to tell us a little bit about kind of what some of that means, how you got to this interest area of longevity, health span, and also sexual health.
So I have been interested in health my entire life. And when I got into the career of medicine, I realized most of what I was being taught was about illness and disease. And although that's incredibly important to understand, like the pathophysiology of disease, what I've noticed in the hospital was that 80% of the things that I was seeing were preventable. And that was a big wake-up call. It was like, okay, if there's fundamentally a bunch of preventable illnesses we're dealing with as doctors, what is driving this disease? And that led me to understanding the importance of lifestyle and how essentially the modern lifestyles we're living is out of alignment with our genetic design. We're spending all of our time indoors. We're not moving our bodies. We're sedentary for most of the day. We're eating lots of packaged processed foods. The diet of a child today is 67% processed foods. That's fundamentally changing our bone structures. People are developing problems with sleep, breathing at younger ages, thinner ages, like people that are thin are developing sleep apnea. We have a very unhealthy lifestyle filled with toxic endocrine disruptors in the environment. And we're not meant to live out of alignment with nature. And so I was like, wow, I need to commit my life to health, but I need to understand what health is. And I need to figure out how do you measure it? Because if you can't measure something, it's hard to improve it. And so I started getting obsessed with the measurement, just like diseases are diagnosed and treated through qualitative questions and quantitative labs. I got interested in how to apply the allopathic model to lifestyle medicine. So I started getting really interested in how do you measure the microbiome? How do you measure the immune system? How do you measure hormones? How do you measure nutrients? How do you measure fitness? How do you measure sleep? How do you measure the resilience to stress? And, how do you measure blood sugar metabolism? And so that really kind of set me apart from the average sort of health, lifestyle doctor, because I was doing this a decade before it was like even considered to be a part of medicine. Nowadays, there's this whole movement of instead of it being biohacking, it's biooptimization medicine. And instead of it just being about longevity, it's about health span extension. How do you extend the number of healthy years of life, not just the number of years of life? And that led me to an understanding of what I believe are the three pillars of human flourishing. The first being metabolic health, because if you don't have a healthy metabolism, you won't have enough energy to maintain the integrity of the body. Second is, and that's really, by the way, that's related to the drive to survive. We have a fundamental biological imperative to survive and reproduce. And so I believe that you have to start with first principles if you're going to optimize and improve. And my personal belief is that the first principles of the human body is survival first. So how do you find and obtain substrates for metabolism? That is food, that is air, that is water. Then there's energy connection, right? So human connection and the connection of our energy is how we actually get to reproduction. And whether you have kids or not, which a lot of women don't these days, but that's totally okay. It's just the reality is your biology wants you to. And it doesn't mean that you're failing your biological imperative. It just means that this is the programming of your cell. And so if you understand that programming, you can understand as a woman, our bodies are constantly changing over time. And everyone's bodies are changing over time. But in particular, women have very strange hormonal patterns throughout their lives. And you need to learn to harness those hormones. You need to learn how to balance those hormones. You need to learn how to connect to others. And we do not thrive as a species without human connection, which is part of the reason why we're seeing so many diseases of despair develop. People are highly disconnected, highly, frankly, ego-oriented through our phones. And we're distracted and we're really not really living in alignment with what we're supposed to be doing, which is we're tribal animals. We're meant to be around people. We're meant to be connected to others. And so fundamentally, I had no idea the role of human connection in health until I started Adamo. And it was really teaching at Stanford and teaching a course on human relationships that I was like, oh, love is not just this like hand wavy, sunshine and rainbows. It's actually like core human programming. And when that gets screwed up, you start developing real significant mental illnesses, right? So adverse childhood experiences is our first sort of example of how human love can be disrupted when a child is abused or traumatized. It basically disrupts their programming. And that leads to pretty significant challenges as an adult, including higher rates of chronic disease and mental illness. Then, on top of that, there's things like divorce, there's like things like breakups, loss of a family member, sexual trauma, physical trauma, war trauma. All of these are examples of social injuries, and even like stalking, for example. So love is not always like a beautiful thing. It can actually be associated with trauma. And so that's part of the reason why I think that you really have to have a broad picture of human flourishing. If you really want to optimize your health, you have to have healthy relationships. You have to heal from your social injuries. You have to work on your psychosocial health, and you can't just focus solely on your biology. The third pillar of human flourishing, I believe, is related to your meaning and purpose. And this is where you come in. You have to have a solid human purpose if you're going to be able to make money. So finding your purpose is a really tough task as a young person these days, because a lot of young people, frankly, do not have a lot of great role models and leaders and teachers of like, how do you get a mentor? How do you find a job? I mean, I had to work very, very hard to get to a point of where I'm at today. And I'm still not where I think I'm going to be in a decade. And it's a constant learning process to continue to find your purpose and to live your purpose and to fight against the social pressures to be like everyone else. Like, you have to find your way and your path. And that's the hero's journey. And if you're lucky, that will start paying off financially. But the reality is we live in, we think that we're separated from nature. We're not. At the end of the day, you have to find a job that puts you in a position in a social structure that you provide a certain level of purpose, and return, you will be paid. And that payment will lead to your capacity to obtain resources and find a partner. So like, if I was taught this as a young person, I think I would have prioritized family a lot sooner than I would have money, because I think a lot of women have been misled by our society and been told like, you can have it all. Well, you can't actually. Like, there's only so much that you can actually accomplish in one lifetime. But we are very lucky as women that we can become independent and we can become financially independent, which puts us in a position where we're actually a lot more free than our predecessors. I personally think there's never been a better time to be a woman because of our financial capacity to earn. But it is a very conflicting time because we now have to choose, like, do we want to continue our career? Do we want to have a family? Like, how are we going to like make sacrifices? And truthfully, Ina Garten said it best. You can't really having it all is actually doing it all. And that's not what every woman realizes they're signing up for. So I think we're in a really interesting paradigm shifting moment for femininity. But this is my theory of human flourishing. And, I've experienced challenges in each area and I experienced success in each area. And I think that that's the beauty of existence, is that there's going to be ups and downs in each of these. You're going to get sick and you're going to get well. You're going to have connection. You're going to have breakups. You're going to have moments where you're making lots of money, and then you're going to have moments where you're really struggling. And that is the human experience. And hopefully you can find a sense of spirituality through all this, so you can find meaning in it all.
I had like 12 questions pop in my head as you were speaking.
That's a monologue.
Where do I want to go now?
Where do you want to go down? I mean, it's funny because like I've got a company that works working in sexuality, but I've really thought broadly about all of these aspects of life because they all matter, That's really what I've been about, is like, what is this? What is the meaning of life? And what is it that we're supposed to be here to accomplish? And how do we make meaning out of a lot of chaos right now?
Yeah, let's go back up to the beginning of, you said, if I had known, like, let's go there. So, I feel like I could go off my perspective of being a 40-something-year-old woman who's like, slowly kind of grasped, my still working on greatly all of these three things. And like you said, not where I will be 10 years from now, but for a lot further than I was. And it took a lot of work. But as a mom of two almost 18-year-olds who are heading to college and applying to college and this is what they're struggling with, this coming up with it all and figuring out where am I going to go and who am I going to be. And I have had, maybe a significant other for 2 years already. And is that like, do I stay close to that person or do I go to a different school to have that autonomous experience? Or, even who am I in the world and what major am I going to box myself into because they're asking me nonstop? I mean, I guess if you were talking to your own 18-year-old self or another 18-year-old, I mean, there's so many, there's 3 tenets of that you mentioned, the metabolic health, the energy connection, and the meaning and purpose. But underneath the hood of all those is millions of pieces.
So, but it's all, think about it all through the lens of energy, right? So you have to make energy, you have to connect that energy. Because when we connect with other people, we share information and resources. What do you think happens at most dinner meetings, business meetings, family dinners? You're sharing information, you're sharing food and resources, right? Then there's the direction of the energy, right? Like, where am I going to put this energy? Am I going to plant and build a family? Am I going to build a company? I built 3 companies in the last decade. They're like my children. I got into a relationship with someone and he wanted me to basically kill my children. And I was like, I'm not willing to sacrifice my children for a human child with you. And that was really painful. It was one of the most painful experiences of my entire life. Thinking that you're like going to mate with someone and they actually want to kind of destroy your life, the one that you built for yourself, the one that you found all of your meaning through. And so young women, look, I got really lucky. I was a 5th grader and a weird, there's this really good NVIDIA CEO, the NVIDIA CEO, easily one of the most valuable companies in the world. He was talking about how he wished that people had experienced pain and suffering because that is what it takes to actually succeed. And I was like, well, when I was in 5th grade, my aunt died, my grandfather died, and something really terrible happened to one of my siblings. And in 1 year, I realized and woke up to like the reality of human suffering. And I was like, in a weird way, all of that pain, I was able to catalyze, and very, very fortunately, to a very fundamental human purpose, which was I wanted to figure out, why do people suffer and what can I do about it? How can I help alleviate suffering? Now that over time transformed into a career where you get to medical school and you realize your dream job is a freaking nightmare. And you might work your entire life for something and realize you wake up one day and you're like, this is not the job I want. And then you have to start an entirely new human journey to figure out, okay, well, what did I actually do this for? And then I had to decide, okay, I'm going to have to figure out, what do I really want to be on mission for? And my mission is to basically figure out how to extend the number of healthy years of human existence, the number of quality years of human life. That took me sitting by myself for 3 months in a loft with not a lot of light in Oakland, California, trying to figure out, how do I turn a career that got completely derailed by misery into something that was actually fruitful. And that required me to piss off my parents pretty dramatically. And frankly, like, I had to go with my intuition and be like, what do I really think that I can be here to help? So what I would do for an 18-year-old girl is I would I have an entire talk on this topic that I gave at A4M. And one of the things that I would do is I would share with them this thing about there's a book called Real Magic, and it's actually a really cool book on magic. And it's like the science of magic, right? And everyone thinks magic is made up, but it's actually a very, 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 very long, like, it goes way back to human early antiquity, right? Like Alexandra. I'm talking like early human times. And magic is no different than what we do when we're creating companies. And what we're doing, we're like deciding, we're like in our minds thinking, I want to create a family. You have to like visualize, okay, first I need a partner. And then I need to fall in love with them. And then I need to have resources. And then you have to actually think about the future that you want to create before you create it. So this is where vision work comes in. I would actually have your 18-year-old girls sit down and actually create a vision of the world that they want to see. If they could change the world, if the world could be a different world than the one that they're in right now, what would that world look like? Okay, so that's the vision that they're trying to look at. That's the bullseye over here. And then they have to ask themselves, all right, if that's the world that I want to see, because the world that I wanted to see was a world where health span extension was part of medicine. I wanted to see a world where health was a science and not just a hand wavy fitness and nutrition thing. Like I was like, where is the science of this? I want to be a part of building that. So I created a mission, which was I want to get humanity to live a long and healthy existence. And I'm going to build products and services that can get people there. And I'm going to build a medical practice that is going to help me create a model for improving human health span, right? So that was the mission. The mission is the path that you take, the actions that you take every day to get to creating that vision of a world. And look, you may not get to be a leader in the world. Not everybody gets to be a leader. Some people are more leadership oriented. I was very leadership oriented from the moment I got out of the womb. Like when I realized there was competition, it was a thing. I had to be a part of, I had to be the best. Like I really wanted to be like a serious competitor. So when I got to high school, I ran for student government day one. I joined every club I could join. I knew that to become a doctor, I had to be a leader. And that was going to require, because doctors are leaders of the healthcare team. Now, if your daughters have any interest in a field of study that could actually create the future that they want to see, they need to study that field so that they can find a path through that field to a job that will lead to that vision of the world that they're trying to actualize. And that is, frankly, something that I did when I went to college. I was actually a molecular and cellular biology major, but I switched because I was like, well, I'm going to study that in medical school. So why am I going to study that twice? That's going to be 8 years of my life committed to the exact same science. I want to study humanity. So I became a humanities major. I actually designed my own major. And I was like, I want close attention from an advisor. I don't want to be one of 1,000 students. I want to be one of 100 students. So I found a major where there was very few students. And I had very close attention from one advisor. That advisor was my mentor. And he helped me. He basically said, look, you can study whatever you want if it fits within international studies, which means you need to design what is it that you want your major to produce for you? And I said, well, I want to improve global health. And so he's like, okay, you need to study medical studies. Medical sciences is one that can count for your part of your major. But then also, if I saw there was going to be a huge revolution in Spanish and Hispanic speaking individuals in America, like I saw the population of America was going to shift. So I wanted to understand that population. So I studied Spanish and I studied Latin America and I studied abroad in Spain and Mexico. And I learned Spanish and I learned skills that were directed towards recognizing that there was going to be a huge population of people that were going to need doctors that understood Spanish and understood their needs. I had a lot of foresight. I was very fortunate. But the point I'm trying to make is that you should not go to college if you think that college is supposed to handhold you into your career. I'm sorry, but young people are, no offense, the Gen Zs, people basically think that Gen Z are lazy because they want everything handed to them. If you want to be a leader in this world, you have to shape your world. You have to shape your career. You have to shape your major. You have to shape your career path because that career path is supposed to lead you to creating that future that you want to see for humanity. So you have to actually grab the reins of your education. And if you want to succeed at it, you cannot be like everyone else who just thinks that a major in higher education is going to bring you a job. What brought me jobs when I first left my residency and got my medical license, I was very highly trained, lots of debt, and I had no idea what I was going to do with my career. I had to go out and find a job. I had to go and network with people. I had to work very hard for other people for a long time before I was able to actually realize, you know what, I want to work for myself. Like young women today have more opportunity than they've ever had before, but you have to seize that opportunity and you have to create the jobs that you want and you have to go out and work harder than everyone else around you to even be seen. And I hate to say it, but like this is the most competitive career environment than ever before because we are working harder than we've ever worked as human species. So you have to find a niche. Just like if you're an organism being planted in an ecosystem, you have to find your niche and you have to work harder than everyone else around you if you want that to succeed. And by the way, there is nothing wrong with wanting to be a mom. There is nothing wrong with wanting to create a family. But again, that world of competing against other women for a partner is also never been more competitive than ever before. So young women, unfortunately, you have to actually be a competitor, which is highly masculine. It sucks. And it's actually not the greatest thing that I would actually say is about being human today. Is like, actually, it's harder to be a woman because you kind of have to be a man and a woman to succeed. It's not easy. But there is like, but if you realize that like there is a clear path in front of you, the point I'm trying to make is like you have to have an intention of where you're going to direct your energy. And every day you have to wake up with that intention and you have to focus energy on that mission. And you have to have your attention on the goal that you want, that future you want to create for yourself. Your attention has to be on that vision every single day. And your emotions, this is where this is really important. You will never achieve your mission, your vision, or keep your intention focused and your attention on that goal if you have a bad attitude, which no one told me growing up. And I had a very bad attitude for a lot of my life. And I had to work through a lot of shit that was actually leading me to having negative emotions. So all of this is like figure outable, but honestly, no one told me this. I had to figure this out when I was in my 30s. I wish someone would have told me this when I was 18, because that would have saved me a lot of pain and suffering of like being lost and confused in my 20s. And like I think an 18-year-old woman is actually stacked. The odds are stacked in her favor if she is a hard worker, if she has good support in the family, if she has some resources to begin with, and if she has a very, very clear focus of where she wants to direct her energy.
I think that's great advice. And your comments on being not separate from nature, but integrated with nature, every plant animal knows its purpose and has its meaning. And it really, yes, speaks to those three things really clicking together. If you have your purpose and meaning, your energy will flow to have with the right connections that bring you joy because that's where you're supposed to be planted, which, then you'll have the resources for the health.
I do want to say one thing, and that's there's a really good thing I saw on Instagram yesterday, 2 days ago. And it was like, find out what lights you up, find out what excites you, because excitement is an energy state. It's a high energy state. Find out what excites you. My sister, Nikki, she hated math. She was terrible at math. She is a world-class master painter. She's an oil painter. She found a job that is like easily more competitive than becoming a doctor, is becoming a successful oil painter. But she was lit up by her purpose because she was good at it, and my parents nurtured it. So if you're a parent out there listening and you're wondering, how do I support my children? Find out what lights them up and pour your energy into helping that child succeed at that. Because that's what my parents did for my sister, Nikki. And she is an absolute world-class, highly successful oil painter that is incredibly difficult to accomplish. And it was because she didn't sit around trying to like focus our energy on calculus, because she sucked at it, because it was not her skill set. That's not how her brain works. We educate young people with a focus on becoming a broad generalist at everything. But really, you want to become quite good at something that you are obsessed with. That is what's going to bring you the most money, the most passion, the most charge. That's what you need to focus on. And like, it is about partially following your passion, but also following your talent. What are you naturally good at? What are you naturally capable of? Like, I was naturally interested in human health and science. And that was where I poured my energy into. And that led to a career in medicine. That was a very like, both you need soft skills and you need science skills to be able to do this job properly. And I was also very interested. I was very like, I really liked speaking. I really liked public speaking, and I liked the performance of that. So I actually poured a lot of my own resources into teaching me how to become articulate, teaching me how to become a good writer, how to become a good speaker. I had to cultivate those facets of myself over the last decade in order to become more of a public figure. And like, that was an intentional desire that I poured energy into. But one of the challenges as a young person is like, we're so scattered because people are on their phones, and your phones are the biggest distraction from your success that you will ever have. You need to get off your phone. You need to get into the real world. You need to learn to interact with other people, and you need to like learn to focus your attention, because individuals that can actually maintain focused attention on a mission and not get distracted by their phones, by entertainment, by random nonsense, by consumptive behaviors, those are the people that are going to succeed in this next decade. It's not the kids on their phone that are distracted, that have poor posture, have no purpose, that have no interest because their dopamine is so sucked out of their brains by distraction. It's the girls and the men, the young men, that can actually find a clear direction and direct their energy in that direction in a passionate way. Those are the kids that are going to win. And frankly, those are the kids whose parents are protecting them from, the social media suck, the TV suck, the distraction suck, the addiction suck. And, like that's a hard job for a parent today. It's actually really tough because you're fighting against forces that are trying to keep your kids from succeeding. And that's not fair. I mean, I grew up in a world where technology was just burgeoning, Nowadays, these young people, their brains are fundamentally rewired because of this technology. So you actually have to be a different human species to actually be different than the masses of consumption and dopamine addiction.
Yeah, the rewiring biologically and biochemically and everything it's totally different. I was talking, even just in terms of the debate, just to go back, not to be political, but I watched it and I left and I said, wow, did we just watch a reality show? Like, I'd like to really compare this to, it is more like what's going to capture attention as opposed to exchanging, true content.
Yeah, but I mean, if you look at the people who, so I'm friends with, like, for example, David Eagleman. We and I have known each other for over a decade. He's got one of the top 10 podcasts in the world, right? Huberman is the top 10 podcasts in the world. These are scientists who pour enormous amounts of effort and work into producing high quality content that actually captures attention far more than a lot of the crap that's out there, right? So like, you can capture attention by producing really good quality work, but those people put enormous amounts of effort into those products. And so it's going to be a really interesting, next decade, figuring out like, how do you capture attention amidst all of the distractions that are keeping people, frankly, dumbed down and broke?
Mm-hmm. Right. Well, I could talk to you probably all day. I have 1,000 more questions, but I will not keep you. I really appreciate your insight. That is not any of the questions I had planned on asking.
If we have a little bit of time, I'd love to. I know this is typically a shorter podcast, but I'd love to talk a little bit about Adamo.
Sure. Definitely. Tell us about that.
So, as a physician, I wasn't taught anything about sexuality in medical school, aside from birth control and like a little bit about hormone replacement. But we weren't really taught about like human connection as medicine. And one of the things that was really interesting to me was how, when I was practicing medicine, I realized that some of my male clients weren't getting better. And I was like, what am I doing wrong here? And I realized it wasn't actually me or the work I was doing with them. It was their relationship that was draining their life force. And an unhealthy relationship or a disconnected relationship is really, really bad for your health. And we don't teach young people how to invest in their relationships like we teach them how to invest in their careers. So we're growing up and we're getting into the dating world, and we're kind of flying blind, trying to figure out love and sex from porn and social media and reality TV. And unfortunately, that's creating a model for relationships that is not realistic. Relationships require work and effort and practice and commitment. And, they have to be pleasurable. You have to have some benefit from them for them to last. And one of the things that I think is really sad is, 20% of young girls in college are going to be raped. And that is going to set them up for bigger challenges in their relationships in the future. And I was one of those girls. I was sexually assaulted twice in college. And so one of the things that I got really interested in when I was a doctor was like the effects of sexual trauma on relationships and sexual function. And that's how I started my company, Adamo, initially, because I was like, I want to help heal sexual dysfunction secondary to psychosomatic causes. So that would be relationship problems, mood disorders, and trauma. And so what we did at Adamo was we developed a psychedelic. Well, initially it was intended to be a psychedelic assisted sex therapy company, but then we realized that the psychedelic space, even though they have amazing capacity to help heal trauma, and I was able to heal my sexual dysfunction with psychedelic medicine, it became a really untenable product to commercialize because of the level of ethical conundrums with psychedelics. So what we did was we decided, why don't we just focus on a sex therapy and really build a sex therapy that could help with relationship challenges and help with basically build a trauma-informed sex therapy that could both improve sexual satisfaction in couples, but also improve sexual dysfunction. And we ran a clinical study on the Adamo method, and it's a completely online program designed for committed couples to basically learn how to have a healthy sex life. And we were really astonished with the clinical results. And we basically discovered that in our study, we were able to dramatically improve sexual satisfaction, sexual communication, reduce sexual shame, improve sexual confidence, improve orgasm frequency, orgasm quality. And we think largely that improved because we improved arousal and lubrication in women. We also improved lasting time and time of penetration in men. So we were able to help couples actually have a healthier sexual relationship. And the interesting thing we also discovered in our study was that we were able to improve intimacy and passion in largely committed couples, people who'd been in relationships for many, many years. So passion and intimacy equate to improvements in romantic love. And we also improved emotional closeness. And it is a whole standard deviation improvement in emotional closeness in committed couples. So we really designed a method around the science of love, of which the science of love is based on the sex drive, the romantic love drive, and the drive to attach. Now, we didn't see major improvements in attachment because we chose existing attached couples, like committed couples. But the fact that we were able to actually improve human love through a fully digital online program for couples was a pretty big deal for us. And what we want to do is extend, an invite to our program to anyone listening, because what I believe and what I've seen is that couples that have stronger rates of romantic love tend to last longer. People who keep dating, people who keep working on their relationships, people who keep this sexual charge alive in their relationships tend to have longer lasting relationships. And the quality of our relationships determines the quality of our lives. So I'm invested in helping couples stay together for as long as possible and maintain that incredible charge and relationship for as long as possible. And I think that that's one of the greatest paths you can have to a more flourishing life.
And you mentioned that you had clients who weren't getting better. So how does the improvement in relational health and sexual health relate to maybe your other aspects of your physical health?
Yeah, so the mitochondria are the power plants of the cells, but they're also the batteries and the capacitors of the cells. And they're also these little mini supercomputers that are transducing all of these cellular signals and determining where is the energy going to go. So if you go home and your home environment is constantly walking on eggshells, you are literally in a state of hypervigilance. That is a massive energetic drain on your nervous system, and you won't be able to fully relax. And in that state, your body will shift your metabolism to a state of stress. And that high stress state will make it actually harder for you to lose weight, harder for you to heal. And I actually encountered a woman in my community who was struggling with, she had a chronic challenge healing. And my gut intuition was telling me this individual has a really, really painful home life, and they're living in such abundance that they can't imagine living without this person. But I knew that it was their relationship that was draining their energy and draining their life force. And the sad thing is that a lot of women will sacrifice their health for love. And I was one of those women. I was actually in a relationship last year, and I really wanted a partner and I really wanted a kid. And so I was like, you know what? I'm just going to go for it. Everyone keeps telling me, you're turning 40. You need to settle down and have a child. So I got into a relationship with someone who was emotionally abusive. And I learned more from that 6-month relationship than I had learned from a lot of my previous relationships, because I had no idea how much my life force was being drained out of my body. And I was starting to get chest pain. And it was really obvious that I needed to exit. And it was so surprising to me that even someone like me who understands this facet of life could find herself in a relationship that was so toxic. And the problem is that we as women feel that there is a limited number of high quality partners in the world, right? There's this general consensus that there's not enough good men left. And the truth is that you being in a relationship that has a lot of financial abundance but is emotionally toxic is going to actually take years off of your life. And I think a lot of women don't realize that. A lot of men and women don't realize that. I've talked to many men in my practice that are in emotionally abusive relationships, and they're like, I can't lose weight. I can't get healthy. And it's you're under a chronic stress. You're under a state of chronic stress. Your primary relationship and your family should be a safe haven. It should be a sanctuary. You should feel safe at home. If you don't feel safe in your home, you're not in the right relationship, and you need to get help, serious professional help, in order to extricate yourself or find a solution of healing that relationship. And unfortunately, a lot of people let their relationships devolve into resentment and pain and defensiveness and the four horsemen of the Gottman's apocalypse of relationships. And that's when they end. And I think we do not invest enough time in understanding how to create a healthy, flourishing relationship. And so a lot of the times they're just not given the same attention as our careers and our children are. And so they fall to the wayside. Your primary relationship should be your primary focus of your life, because that is going to be the biggest predictor of your health and your happiness. And I know that when I was going to medical school. And, my 20s, I was largely healing from the sexual trauma, and I was so dissociated from my health, from my body, that I didn't even really prioritize relationships. And so that's one of the things I would tell young women going to college as well is you need to protect yourself. You need to educate yourself about dating. You need to realize that your biggest predator is a man, and that these young men have no idea how powerful their hormones are. And they will do things that they will regret for the rest of their lives. And the reality is that most sexual trauma occurs in initially a consensual context that becomes non-consensual. That is not taught to young women. That was not taught to me in rape prevention. It was not at all explained to me properly in terms of how to protect myself. And there's a lot of alcohol binging in college. And that puts you in a very risky situation where your senses are dulled and your faculties are affected by the chances of you being able to properly think through, is this a safe situation for me? So if there's one thing I would like to do in this lifetime, it's to ideally take the part of our education around how to embody consent and put that into a college-based program for young women and men to learn how to read, what does a person's body say when they're saying yes? And what does a person's body say when they're saying no? And I don't think we're teaching that to young people. And so, I have to say it out loud, like, it is a wild safari out there in the dating world. And you think that we think that as women, we're walking amongst civilized creatures. And I'm not a man hater. I absolutely love men, but in college age men, with the amount of hormones in their body and the amount of lack of neural development, it's a wild world out there. It's like you're literally wandering into the woods and you might get attacked by a bear. And, I do think that, I've worked with a lot of amazing men and women, and it's not just women who get abused, by the way, in college. I've actually dated people who were raped, and men that were raped in college by their partners. They were passed out, they were raped by their partner, and they ended up impregnating someone in their sleep. We do not talk about these crazy things that happen to people, and we kind of wander through life thinking the world is civilized. It's not. It's still very, very uncivilized. And I think we need to do a better job in educating young people about love, about sex, about healthy relationships, about how to build and maintain healthy relationships, because it is probably the biggest factor in your life happiness and your health and your flourishing.
Yeah, I feel like I have some adult friends even, and, if you have a few more minutes, maybe touch on this. I'm curious the impact of Match and the online dating is having, because a lot of times what's happening with all of the women that I'm friendly with who are divorced or dating or never been married, they're finding, most of them can't lose weight, high stress, low, self-worth, and this host of things going on that's, it's like a snowball of poor wellness, I suppose. And I'm just curious what the nature of the dating apps and usually they last a date or two and then they just ghost and they're gone, or you have these situations where you maybe give of yourself quite early in the relationship and then you're like, oh, where'd they go? It seems to not be concentrated to college age, but really this is a very confusing environment for adults.
I completely agree. I think that the dating world right now is a minefield. I mean, I think the number one place to meet people today is still online. But I think that you need to be really discerning and work extremely hard before you have any physical contact with a man. Find out, are you guys compatible? Because the problem is that the moment that you get intimate with a guy is the moment, frankly, you start giving away a bit of your power to them. They own the frame, and you start once you have a few orgasms with a guy, you start turning on the attachment drive, and your brain says, this is the person. And I have been totally guilty of this, by the way. That's part of the reason why I ended up in a really unhealthy, toxic relationship, is because I got intimate with the man before I was ready. And that turned on the attachment drive. So you actually need to understand that this is not just about your reason and your logic. This is about your neurobiology that is fundamentally designed to get you pregnant. It is not designed to find you the best, most perfect partner. It's trying to get you to find the person that's going to stick with those kids. And you need to be really discerning with the guys that you are intimate with, because if you are not careful, you might end up getting prematurely attached to someone that ghosts you. And so I recommend you spend a lot more time in the preliminary phase of dating a man where you really get to know them. And frankly, I'm obsessed with astrology. So I get a man's birthday. I do a full astrological analysis of a guy. It's like basically like psychic stalking, or not stalking, it's psychic spying. And it's a crazy thing to even say out loud because it's not really stalking, but like basically spying means that like you are getting information about a person before they've revealed it to you. You can learn so much about a man through astrology. There's an app called AstroGold. I can learn this entire man's storyline of his life from just his birth date, time, and location. And it is bananas. And then on top of that, I try to get their Myers-Briggs. I also try to hear their Enneagram. I want to know their, like, these three things, like Enneagram, Myers-Briggs, and astrology. I'm serious. Do not underestimate the capacity of you as a woman to figure out if this guy is a match for you or not. Like, you need to find out, what are your non-negotiables? What are your absolute non-negotiables in a relationship? If a man doesn't want to have kids and you are definitely looking for a relationship to have a family, they are not your man. What's the timing? Is this person available or not? Right guy, the wrong time, it's the wrong guy. Like, circumstances might inhibit you from being with someone. They live in a different city. There's a great book called How to Be an Adult in Relationships. Highly recommend reading this book. Highly, 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 highly recommend this book. This book is a game changer for adults learning how to date. Like, I did not learn any of this stuff until like the last 3 years. And I feel like I could have saved myself 10 years of dating wrong if I had known what the heck I was doing. First of all, why are you dating? What is your intention of your date? Are you looking for a partner? Are you looking for a family? Are you looking for a lover? Are you looking for a commitment? Are you looking for a life partner? Are you looking for a short-term partner? Know what it is that you're doing this for. And then figure out, are their intentions clear? What do they want? Because there are men that want families and children, and there are men that absolutely are the absolute opposite of that. Is this man a playboy? Are they absolutely at all ready for what it is that you are ready for? If it is no on the first date, walk away. Like, your time is so valuable. And women do not value their time because their self-esteem is so low. And as someone who's had to rebuild her self-esteem after having it been damaged in a relationship, you have to actually really build your core network of friends, but also recognize that you need to have your own discernment about what it is that you want. And your friends, sometimes women will kind of tell you things in order to, like, women can be really competitive with their friends in the dating scene and actually diminish your capacity to find the right person. So you have to both listen to your friends, but also take their opinions with a grain of salt. I highly recommend getting a dating coach or a relationship coach, because there's a lot that you can do to set yourself up for success because you are more informed and more discerning to begin with. So yeah, I really should start I really need to like do more content around this stuff, because this has made, I think you learn more from your mistakes than your successes in relationships. And you need to talk to people who have successful relationships. The ones that my friends, the most successful relationships, they invest in those relationships on the regular. They are putting effort into that relationship consistently, quarterly. They run the relationship like a Fortune 500 company. They put so much time, effort, energy, and investment into their partner. And there's a reason why they're succeeding. And my friends that get married focus all their effort and energy on their children. They don't stay together because their energy is only directed to their kids, and they've lost that interest in their partner. And now they're like, I'm not even interested in him anymore. Well, it's because you didn't invest in that person. And of course they're neglected. And of course they're cheating. There's a reason for that. You're not paying attention to them anymore. And it's really, there's a lot of unavoidable pain in our world, but we're not educated. And, I went to this Tony Robbins relationship seminar, and it was one of the best investments of my time I've ever been to. And like, the stuff that I learned at that seminar, I'd say 80% of it I'd already been reading about because I'd been building a company around sexuality and relationships. So I think it takes time, effort, and investment to read the right books, to have the right frame, to have and also my friends that tried to game the dating system by trying to trick men into marrying them are in the most insecure relationships I've seen. So you have got to be authentic because that person's going to find out who you are eventually. And my friends who tried to game the system by being someone else than they actually were to get a man to fall in love with them and marry them are the most unhappy in their relationship and they're most insecure. And so I really believe in really being a totally authentic person and really being honest with who you are up front with the person that you're dating. Because if you are not the right person for them, you better find out early and soon to not waste your time.
100%. Yeah. I appreciate all of your insights. That's very poignant comments and topics. You mentioned a couple of books, but what's another of your favorite books that you could share with us? I always ask everybody this question.
Sure. I mean, obviously, I'd love to plug my own book, The Spark Factor. I spent 3 years on this book. It's a treatise on insulin sensitivity, insulin resistance, and metabolic health. And it's really a book about how do you optimize your metabolism. And if you have prediabetes or diabetes, this is the book for you. I had prediabetes about a decade ago, and I needed to fix my body. And fixing my metabolic health is the one thing that's giving me the biggest boost in my appearance and my longevity, my skin, my fitness, my brain function. It's really a fundamental to longevity is your energy. And so that book is really, really based on energy. And I love, my friend Casey and Kelly Means are on a total tear right now through the media. And I'm friends with these folks. I've been friends with them for many years now. And I've been really excited to see them get so much attention for their book, Good Energy. So it's been a bestseller for weeks now. I think it's a really phenomenal book on the theory of why we are getting sick. But if you want a little bit deeper of the tactical stuff on what to actually do, read my book, The Spark Factor, because these books work really well synergistically. Now, if you're dealing with any mental illness, I would recommend reading Brain Energy by Christopher Palmer. It's a really good book on metabolic health and brain function. And if you just want to understand why we get sick, there's a good book by Ben Bickman of that same name. It's about insulin resistance. Every one of these books is going to give you the knowledge you need to fix your metabolism. And that is, if you have nothing better to do with your time, this is the biggest bang for your longevity buck.
All right. Awesome. Thank you. And where can people find you if they're interested in any of your services or Adamo Health after that great conversation?
Sure. Check out Living Adamo, LIVINGADAMO.com, at Living Adamo on Instagram, at drmolly.co on Instagram, and www.drmolly.co, and then on X and LinkedIn at Molly Maloof, MD.
Thanks so much for joining me today and for diving into so many topics.
Yeah, totally. I appreciate you so much. This has been a really fun podcast. I appreciate you.
That was fun. Thank you so much. Securities and advisory services are offered through LPL Financial, a registered investment advisor, member of FINRA, SIPC.